Hello, YouTube. This is Jason Sele, and welcome to Sele Training. If you've been a subscriber of this channel over the past, anytime over the past 3 years, you'll know that you've heard my voice. Well, this is the man behind the voice for the very first time. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the MoFi 4500 router, which can be used for internet access remotely or at home using your cell service. And out of all the videos I've done for the last 3 years, this one seems to get the most questions. So I want to share with you a little bit of background about how I chose the MoFi router, and I'm actually using it right now. This is live streaming over cell service, and hopefully the quality is good and you guys can hear me okay. But I want to walk through a little bit about the MoFi router, why it works the way it does, and why it is a good choice for this kind of solution as opposed to other types of routers. So I see there's a few people joining in right now. Glad to see you guys here. I want to jump in just a quick background. I've been in IT for about 30 years. And at a lot of the companies I've worked at, I have managed the cell services for those companies, and I've used, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, all the different carriers, and I've gotten used to learning which ones work for different features. And for my use, I have chosen to go with T-Mobile and AT&T for remote access through the MoFi. Um, and Basically, with the MoFi router, you can configure it to use your cell service to provide internet access to all the devices that you have in your house or in your RV or wherever you're located. I am right now broadcasting live from an RV parked out in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota. And everything that you see is streaming over cell phone service through the MoFi. So, why the MoFi? Let me talk a little bit about that first, and then I'm going to have some Q&A available a little bit later. And I'm hearing that volume's a little low, so let me pull my microphone down. That way it'll show up in the video here, but hopefully that'll be a little bit better quality for you. Does that sound better? 1, 2, 3, testing. Well, hopefully that'll work. So with the MoFi 4500, one of the things that you can do is you can take a SIM card from your cell phone, and that can be any of the major carriers and even some minor ones as well. Good. Sounds like the quality is better now. And the key with the MoFi 4500 as opposed to other routers is it provides a setting called the TTL. And the reason why that matters, and I'll try not to get too technical here, but I want to explain a little bit of the background. When you're streaming data on your cell phone, there is a TTL setting on all the IP packets. And going back 3, 4, 5 years ago, a lot of the cell carriers started providing streaming data for free through their cell phones. And it doesn't count against the data that you use that's part of your data caps. So the key with the TTL setting, they look at that TTL to determine what the time to live setting is to know whether it's coming from a cell phone or whether it's coming from some other device. And if it's coming from a cell phone, then they don't charge you additional for that data and they don't throttle that data. So with the MoFi, it has an option, and I'm going to show you what the MoFi looks like here. So that's the MoFi right there, and you can barely see it from here, but down at the bottom there's a little slot where you can put your SIM card. And inside of the settings for the MoFi, got some noise here. Let's see where that's at. There is a setting option right here called the ISP TTL, time to live. And by default, it's set to Linux 2 65. You can change that to these other settings, but out of the box, it's going to be at 65, and that's what you want it to be. So with the TTL set to 65, the way that the TTL setting works is when you connect a device to the MoFi and you um, communicate through your cell service, it starts out at TTL 65. When it gets to the modem, the router, it goes to 64. And then each device that it connects to as it's communicating over the internet drops one until it either finds its target or it goes down to 0 and then it throws the packet away. So when that happens, the cell carriers look at the TTL, and if they see 64, then they know that you're streaming data and they don't throttle it. They assume that you're using Netflix or Hulu or YouTube or some other app on your cell phone, and they give you free reign to full access to that data. So if you don't have a true unlimited cell phone plan, when you hit those data limits, the speed throttles down so slow that you can't stream anything. But with the MoFi and with this special TTL setting, you can actually go past that data limit and stream as much as you want to. So let me talk a little bit about some of the things that I've had some questions about regarding the uh, MoFi router, and then I'll open it up for you guys to ask some questions and share with whatever information you want. So the first thing to talk about is in the TTL menu, uh, in the menu of the MoFi, you'll see this internal modem option on the menu, and you're looking at the SIM4 model. I actually provided links in the description below the video to the SIM7 and the SIM4. The SIM7, I would recommend that's the one that you get if you're going to look at using this solution. But this is the SIM4, and the menus are very similar. So inside there, there's this internal modem option, and within that, you have some tabs here: General Setting, Provider Selector, Advanced Setting, Miscellaneous. When you go into the provider selector, you can choose between AT&T, T-Mobile, generic as T-Mobile, or the other carriers. But here is this access point APN, and that's something that you need to also set to your carrier. And let me show you what the menu options look like. I've pre-saved these, so I'm bringing them up. So here's the ones that come up in the MoFi by default. You have Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, Cricket, US Cellular, a bunch of different ones to choose from here. And you can see with AT&T and Sprint and T-Mobile, there's multiple ones, and that's really based on the age of the device that you have. If you have the newer phones, you want to pick the top one, or AT&T, you want to pick broadband. And once you set that, that defaults the MoFi to communicate to your SIM card using that carrier and that access point. Now, if your carrier is not in the list, the MoFi can still work with those SIM cards, but you might have to create a custom access point, which is right here. And you have to look up, you can do a search on Google to find out what the access point is. You'll see uh, something like, visible.com, an address like that. And when you fill that in as the custom APN, that should make those SIM cards work. Those are the two key things to make sure your provider selector and make sure that your general settings here, you have the APN and the access point if it's custom set right. Next to that, you also want to make sure that your internal modem, your IMEI number, and your phone number, and all this information is coming up and showing properly. If you don't have those visible, then you may need to select this reset or reset the phone number or do this carrier net max fix up. That will usually correct this so you see this information. The other critical thing I want to tell you is you don't want to try this in the MoFi unless you already have your uh, um, SIM card activated and tested in a phone before you use it in the MoFi. If you just go buy a SIM card from a carrier and plug it right into the MoFi, you're not going to get it to work right out of the box. So um, be careful with that. And it looks like I didn't show you the screen here. So uh, this is the access point APN. This is where the custom APN is. That's the TTL setting. Here's your phone options with your phone number and your SIM ID. And here's the reset on the modules. So having said all that, I'd like to open it up with some questions. So feel free to go ahead and post a question, and I'll try to do my best to answer it. Anyone at all? And I will comment here that, John, yes, I look a little different from my profile. And part of that is because of this right here. But hopefully it's good. Anyone have any specific questions? You guys having challenges at all getting your SIM cards to work in the MoFi? Has anybody had success with it? Let me know. There's one question here. Can you flash the MoFi with router firmware, aka Golden Orb? The MoFi does allow you to flash the firmware. I'm not 100% sure about that specific firmware, but it is, I believe, a WE826 compatible modem router, and it does take those firmware options. So hopefully you can flash it with that. And that's actually available in the system menu on the MoFi, where you can do that flash. Let's see here. Got one from David Babb. Signal strength, how can we improve it, and what is good? So the one thing I'll mention, let me go back to my screenshot here, and let's take a look at the band scanner. So one of the first things I suggest you do when you plug in your SIM card and start using the MoFi, setting things up, once you have your phone number and you have other things active, you can do this band scanner, and it will go out and search with your cell SIM all of the available bands that you have access to, and it'll tell you whether they're available or not, and it'll give you this coverage. Now, I don't rely on that too much. I generally will go through and test them, but you'll notice right here it says locks released. So after it does the scan, it finds the different channels 2, 4, 5, 12, and 30, or whatever other ones are available in your area. And then it will release those locks. And when you come back to the band scanner area, let's go back to the band lock, you'll see that it sets the current band to the one that it determines is the best option. And then you can lock the modem to that same band, or you can choose to lock it to one of the other bands. I usually, whenever I go to a location, and I'm sitting in an RV right now, I travel a lot and I do this stuff remotely, so I need internet access. When I get to a location, I'll go ahead and do this band scan, and I'll determine first off whether my T-Mobile or whether my AT&T has better connectivity, and I can even look on my phone to see if it's got coverage first. And then I take that SIM chip, plug it in, I set up the provider, I set up the APN, and then once that's ready to go, I do a band scan and I'll let it detect one, and I'll set it to that, and I'll do a speed test. And you can do that from speedtest.net, where it will scan and tell you what the speed of your router is running, communicating with the internet. And at that point, if it's good enough, typically if I'm at 5 megabit per second or higher download speed, then that's good enough to do most things. I can stream TV, I can do all kinds of stuff. And I set it at that, and I leave it unless I see any kind of communication problem. So that tends to work really well. Now, if you are in an area where you have very low coverage, even on your phone, then one of the best options you can do is you can add an antenna to the MoFi router. And let me go back to my picture of the MoFi. So when you see the MoFi, there's these wider paddles. Those are the ultra wide 4G LTE, and this is the larger antennas that pick up the cell signal. The smaller antennas are your Wi-Fi to make your hotspot available to other devices as Wi-Fi in your house or your RV. So the key is you can unplug one of these or both, and you can plug in a cable and run it to one of the antennas. And I have a couple listed. The ProxyCast is one. That's the one I use. And then there's a Yagi. But there's a variety of different antennas available that all work for these types of connections. And it's essentially a cell phone booster antenna. Some of you, if you have an RV, you probably have seen the WeBoost. Well, the WeBoost is similar. It's got its own hardware, but that antenna can also be used to plug into the MoFi. So this MoFi provides the same thing that WeBoost does, and it boosts that cell signal. So if you're getting low communication connection speeds, and it's enough that things work, but it's not enough that you need more speed, try one of those antennas to improve the signal, and that will at least, in my case, I see double, if not triple, the speed when I flip my antenna up, and I have one on the top of my RV that I use all the time. So hopefully that's the best option there for making that work. I see Wayne Edmondson, welcome. He asked, does the MoFi take nano SIM or? So you know what? I forget the exact name. Let me bring up a window here. Da, 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 da. That may answer that question. Okay. So this is the MoFi on Amazon, and you can see right here it's $300. If you scroll down, there is this add-on SIM card adapter, sorry, and it is a nano micro to standard 401 conversion kit. So I usually recommend getting that. It's only $5. And the SIM that you normally have in your phone, I think that's the micro, but you can put it into one of these to make it a larger size, and it's the standard, I believe, is the name of it, but that is a larger size one that goes into the MoFi. So you got to make sure you have that adapter right here that the SIM card from your phone fits into, and then that slides into the MoFi. So I recommend getting that along with the MoFi if you're going to look at doing this route. Okay, what else we have for questions here? And to Ty's comment, I do believe that the newer MoFis come with that adapter. If that's true, looks like a couple other people have mentioned that as well. So I think that's true. You don't necessarily need to buy that $5 add-on. What's nice about that add-on, though, that I don't think the MoFi comes with is there's a little a pin holder that you can use to push into your phone and iPads and other devices to pop the SIM card out, which is kind of handy to have. So, okay, you can hear me. I was just checking. Maya, sounded like you couldn't hear me, but you can now. All right. Let's see, another question here. What is the cheapest carrier, Wayne again, for a single line service that will work with a MoFi? So this one's been a very common question because obviously on my video that I posted, it says the $20 a month plan will work. Now, people have called me a liar. They said this is a scam. It's not. I actually have an AT&T SIM and I have a T-Mobile SIM, and both of those cost me $20 a month. And I use more than 150 gigabytes of data every month on both of those chips. And I just swap them out as I need to. It does work. They are available. However, I had T-Mobile already on an existing cell plan, so I added a line. That's why it was $20. If you go with a single line plan with T-Mobile, you're probably going to be in the $60-$70 range. And I think you might be able to get that down to 50-55 if you use the auto pay and paperless billing options that they offer you. So you're not going to get it down to 20. With AT&T though, I actually went to a store. It took me 3 stores to find it because somebody told me this was available, and I hunted it down and I found it. And some of the other subscribers that I've talked to have been able to find this as well. And I asked them for an iPad unlimited data plan. And they provided me at one store. It was the third store I talked to. The other 2 said, oh, I don't have anything like that. But the third store I went to, which was in California, did provide me with a $20 a month iPad plan as a new customer. I didn't have any AT&T cell service before that, and I added that plan for $20 a month, and it's been working now for over a year. Other people have told me they've called around to a number of stores and they haven't been able to find that plan. What I heard from a technical person that works at AT&T is, yes, they do have that plan. A lot of the workers don't know the plan exists or think that it's not technically something that they can release. And my understanding is that's not true. It is available, and if you badger them, they might give in and give it to you, or go to another store until you can find one that will give it to you. That's probably the cheapest thing that I've seen that gets you that $20 rate. Now, I have seen some other people use some other carriers like Visible or some of the other MVNL, whatever the name of that is, the add-on plans that are kind of subsidiaries of the major carriers, and they've been able to get those for $35 and add them in and get them to work. So that's an option as well. Okay, let's see. So here's David had mentioned here. How about SIM is installed, but in the MoFi settings it says no SIM is installed, and that's the SIM 7. So a question for you, David: does it work even though it says it's not installed, or is it just not working, not giving you internet access at all? Generally, what I tell people to do is to come to this screen, if I can bring it up here. Okay. And I mentioned this earlier, but you may not have caught it. These options right here, press to reset the Sierra module, press to reset the phone number and SIM ID. Those generally will reset the detection of the SIM card, and you may have to reboot, might even have to reboot a couple of times before it all kind of comes back, and wait a minute after it reboots, and then you'll hopefully see those numbers. But some people there's been a couple of people that have told me that it works even despite the fact that they don't have that number showing up. So you're saying it does work on your message here. It's interesting. I'm not exactly sure why it wouldn't show it, but I have seen that before where mine, when I reboot it, it doesn't show for a few minutes and things are working. And then I look at it later and it's actually showing up. So it's unusual. I don't know why it's doing that. One thing you might want to check too, just to confirm, in the system menu on the MoFi, there is a firmware update option. And you may want to make sure that it's on the latest version. It's kind of a little tricky. You can click and download the file, or you can actually do a live update, but try to get it to the latest version because they do fix things, and sometimes they fix those bugs. And Ty mentions here that you can get Visible for $25 with Party Pay, which runs on Verizon towers. I've actually heard from a couple people they've been able to get Visible and they've gotten it working. So the challenge, I will mention, I've spread this all over my comments on all of my other videos, but a lot of people don't look at this. Verizon, you got to be really careful. The number of people have been able to get it to work just fine, and there's been a number of people that have had trouble getting it to work. They can't even get it to detect. Or I even had somebody today that posted, they put the Verizon SIM in from their cell phone that was working fine. And once they put it in the MoFi device, it deactivated it, blocked it, and they had to call and they reactivated it. And then they did it again, it blocked it, and they called and they ended up having to send them a new SIM. So Verizon has some settings in there where they match the device, and when they see it in a different device like the MoFi, sometimes it gets blocked. I don't know if that's true for Visible, but there's been a couple of people that have had it working just fine, and that's a pretty good price, 25 bucks. So good deal. Good suggestion, Ty. And I don't know what this means. Tremendous respect. But thank you. um, let's see. Wayne mentions here website on Visible Wireless says $40 a month. So yeah, I think what he's referring to is when you share, you can refer to somebody else and you get a discount. So that can bring the price down to $25 if you have gotten a couple other people to sign up. Don't know how many that is, if that's just one sign up or if it's more than one. But oh, party is a group of 4 people. That's how you get the party price. Gotcha. So if you got some friends and you can get them on Visible, you can get that down to $25 a piece, but you got to have 4. Now, I will say if you're talking 4 phone lines, generally you'll find that T-Mobile's got the best prices, and I will tell you, T-Mobile has some blazing fast speeds with the MoFi. I've been real impressed with it. However, with T-Mobile, I have found that there's certain locations where I can't get T-Mobile to work, and AT&T does work. So it's hit or miss. Having mentioned earlier that I've managed cell phone for some corporate offices at a few different places over the years, I can tell you from experience that Verizon's going to have the best coverage across the country generally. They're also the most expensive, and they nickel and dime you everywhere they can, especially if you use international data. But T-Mobile's getting much better, and now with this merger with Sprint, and I think even with 5G, they're probably going to bump ahead of the other ones eventually, but that's a ways out. So, and AT&T's always kind of been in the middle for pricing, middle for coverage, but they they seem to be better in some places where I have no T-Mobile access. Um, However, I will say AT&T, in my experience, has been the worst support, the worst customer service of all of them. So let's see. Here's one from Bo. So hard to set up Chinese no-name router settings. Yeah, and I will say this. There's been some comments about Kufi, Kuwfi, which is almost identical to the MoFi. It's basically a clone. And it's only like $140 on Amazon. There's been people ask me about it. Well, I've asked them to send me one to test it, and unfortunately, they are too cheap to send it to me. But hey, if you're out there and you want me to refer to your device, let me know. I will gladly test it. Somebody else did test it and gave me some feedback. And they said the one challenge with that device is it's a little more complex to set up things in the menu than the MoFi. And if you're technical, you can get it figured out, but it's not as easy. And the TTL setting is more of a manual option. And that's the key to going past your data limits. If you don't have that TTL, you can use it as a shared SIM, but you're going to get throttled as soon as you hit the data limits. That reminds me of one thing too I want to mention. With the different carriers. So you've probably seen, or maybe you haven't. Recently, AT&T has upped their data limits to 100 gig on their unlimited plans. So even if you get their kind of basic entry level data plan, they'll give you 100 gig of streaming data. And all of that doesn't really matter so much because the TTL setting will go past that limit for you. But in general, AT&T is up to 100. That used to be 22. Some of the older plans are 22 still. The T-Mobile plan's been 50. I'm expecting that to go up soon. And the Verizon, typically those are 22. And they all say unlimited plans, but in reality, that means we'll give you as much data as you can use, but we're going to make it super slow once it hits those data limits. and it's almost useless. You can't stream TV or do any of those kind of things with that speed. So you have to get a solution that's going to give you beyond the data limits. And if you're one of the lucky ones that have one of the grandfathered true unlimited plans, you don't have to worry about that. But for the rest of us that didn't get in on that deal early on, you're going to have to come up with something like this MoFi solution with the TTL setting to bypass that problem. Let's see, Joe C. Now I want to get a MoFi version 7 for T-Mobile, and I'm sure that it will work fine. Well, I recommend now doing the Sim 7. The Sim 4 is the one that I'm still using. The only problem with the Sim 4 is it doesn't have the new 66 and 71 bands, and with T-Mobile especially, the 71 band is way faster. So I've noticed one thing that's kind of interesting you can do is you can go into your phone and you can actually see the band that it's using. And oftentimes I'll see 71 and I'll like, oh, great, I don't have 71 because my Sim 4. So I am going to upgrade to the Sim 7. I'm giving it a little bit of time. My current one's working fine. But I would go the Sim 7 today for T-Mobile and Verizon and AT&T, which they say AT&T is not certified, but it does work. It's going to get certified later this year. I don't think that means much. Technically, it's going to work anyway. The only thing you need the Sim 4 for is Sprint, and Sprint's getting merged into T-Mobile, so that won't matter in a little while anyway. Um, let's see. So here's a comment from Michael Diaz or Michelle. Yeah. Will the MoFi work outside of the US, Canada, and Mexico international GSM networks? Thinking on getting one for a friend in South Africa. So I've had this question a few times. I don't really have an exact answer for you. The only thing I would say is there are several international features in the MoFi. And if you go to mofinetwork.com, they'll tell you some of the data about the different countries. Now, the trick is that means that you can get it to work, and even T-Mobile is GSM, so a lot of other countries have the same technology as GSM, and as long as you've got a SIM and it plugs into the MoFi, and you can set that APN setting that we talked about earlier, which I'll show you again. That's this access point right here. As long as you can set that to one of your carriers in a foreign country, then it's going to work. Now, having said that, I have not had anybody confirm to me that any of the other countries are working to go past the throttled data limits with streaming data yet. I haven't gotten any feedback, haven't got negative feedback saying it doesn't work. So I'm curious to find out if people want to answer that for me. That would be great. Okay, let's see. Double check a couple other things here. Yes, Wayne, AT&T is very bad. Little story for you. When I initially set up AT&T, before I got the $20 a month plan, I bought one of the prepaid $35 plans online because I had read other people use that, and those have since been blocked in a lot of places. So I've had a lot of feedback from people that the prepaid plans don't work anymore. But at the time, I was trying to set it up, and I registered it and got a SIM and tried to plug it in, and it wouldn't work. And I got an error on the website when I set it up. Well, there was no way to deactivate it from the website, and I couldn't log in because it didn't provide me a login or a phone number. And I ended up spending, I bet, 5 or 6 hours trying to call AT&T and try to get a hold of somebody to find my plan and figure out why it's not working. And I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And every time I called into the main line, they transferred me to another number that ended up hanging up on me repeatedly for 5 hours. So I finally was able to go into a local AT&T store. They couldn't find my account either, and I got charged for the service. But 30 days later, unknown to me, randomly, they credited me that payment that I made, and I never had an active cell account with them that way. It was weird. So I went and got the $20 a month plan, and it worked great. Okay. Comment here from Joe. Have had a MoFi with T-Mobile US for over 5 years and never ever had a problem. Good. That goes back a ways. That's well before I even knew the MoFi existed. So glad that's working for you. And are you able to go past the data limit, the data cap, with the TTL setting at 65? Let me know. Let's see. I think this question was asked already, but I will respond again. Any way to install the MoFi firmware to other similar routers? The firmware is actually based on the WE. I think it's 826 is the number, and that is a standard out there that works on multiple ones. You'll find the KUFI, KUWFI, the MoFi, and some other non-name brands that are all compatible with the same firmware. Uh, Obviously, that's highly technical. Even me, as a network engineer, previous life, it's pretty complicated. And so I applaud anyone that can get those to work, which is why I recommend the MoFi, even though it's more expensive, because it's much easier to set up out of the box than it is to go in and try to do all that firmware stuff. But you can do it, and you can save some money if you want to go that route, no doubt. And Joe said yes. So good. You've had that bypassing the data limits. I will mention I have had one person out of all the subscriber comments that I've had for the past year. I've had one person say that their service got disabled, and it was AT&T, and they were using about 500 gig of data a month, and they got blocked and were told that it was because of overuse. So there is a risk that you can get blocked if you are really using a lot of data. I've gone a year with 150 every month, sometimes 200 on multiple, T-Mobile and AT&T, and I have not had any problems with my SIM card or the MoFi or communication ever. So let's see. One more question here from Ty. If you add a line for $20, how much data used would be pushing the limits to use? Okay, just kind of what I mentioned. I don't think you're going to have any problem if you use 2, 3, 400 gig a month. But when you get to that 500 gig, I think that's the trigger where they start to put a, potentially block you. Now, I've read the terms and conditions, and I'm going to back up a little bit. Streaming data is provided by the carriers with unlimited services on purpose. So if you remember back a few years, Binge On with T-Mobile, they came out with the service where they kind of partnered with Netflix and different apps, and they provided unlimited streaming through the phone. And the reason why they did that is because it's a small resolution display device, and they figured, well, we're going to offer these apps, people can watch stuff and they can stream. Well, when they did that, they started looking at that TTL to determine whether communication's coming from your phone, and when it is, they basically stream that data forever, and you can use as much as you want. So even if you're on a hotspot plan with a T-Mobile in the past, and a lot of them were like 2 gig or 10 gig a month, and you hit that 10 gig, your streaming would still run at full speed. You didn't have throttling. And the reason why is because they provided that streaming data with unlimited services. And the only way they knew whether you were browsing some website on your phone or whether you were running streaming data from Netflix is they looked at the TTL of your phone and they determined that, hey, it's at 64. So we set the MoFi to 65 so that everything that communicates through it drops down to 64, and it looks the same to them. So they assume this is data streaming from your cell phone, and they give you unlimited access, and it goes way past the throttling. So that's how that works. Theo Joe Fid was a hoax. I don't think I've seen that one, but there was I think I know the one you're talking about where he had some weird plug-in thing that was supposed to give you unlimited data, and it was fake. Theo Joe actually is, he had a bunch of parody type stuff, but he's gone legitimate for the last few years, and he does quite well, by the way. um, yeah. So let's see. Yeah, and to answer that question, you ever try the LTE fix for building a MoFi clone? About $200 for that. No. And the reason why is because the $100 I would save between the $200 and the $300 for the MoFi, it's not worth my time. I got better things to do. Let's see here. Yeah, made an antenna out of plastic cups. uh, so I want to mention uh, I am currently traveling around in an RV full time. I actually left my IT director position a year ago, and I am traveling around the country. And while I'm doing that, I'm doing these videos. I have a whole bunch of things on IT related videos, Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that kind of stuff. And I've dove into this MoFi router as well because it's a solution that I needed to find and use for my own internet access. So uh, I've been putting these videos out and using the MoFi for wireless internet in all the different locations I'm going to. And in the past year, I've traveled to 10 different states. And right now, like I mentioned earlier, I am on the edge of a lake in southwest corner of South Dakota. And I was in Colorado and Utah and Arizona weeks ago. And all those locations, I've been able to find communication speeds uh, as high as 70, 80, even 100 megabit in some spots. And what I found, just so you know the speed you need for different features, if I'm at about 3 megabit or higher, I can do everything I want to do. So I can stream TV, I can watch Netflix, I can uh, run my computer and access the internet and browse different sites. I can play videos on YouTube. I can run all that. I have a security system. It's not 24/7 live, but it records motion and it loads that to the cloud. That all works. All of that functions from my RV remotely in all those locations, anywhere I get 3+ megabit per second speed. And most of the places I go to, I get 6 to 8, 10. Right now, today, I'm getting 20 to stream this video. And I've been as high as 36 here in the last couple of days in this same spot. So it goes up and down. So cool. Let's see. Oh, you like my. Oh, I clicked the wrong one, Wayne. Hi again. You like my PowerPoint vids better. Well, I try to do all the same quality stuff on all my videos. The best one performance wise has been my Excel videos, but PowerPoint's close behind that. So, but thank you very much. Appreciate that. And if you haven't checked it out, please subscribe to my channel and take a look at the videos. If you go to youtube.com/Sele training, take a look at the videos that I have available. I do cover basically everything tech related in terms of education, all the Office apps, Skype, and Windows 10. And then I get into stuff like this, some things around the MoFi, internet access, also cell phone, iPhone type things, and other suggested things that people come up with. So I'm going to keep cranking out those videos, and I hope you guys continue to watch. Let's see. Joe C. I've tried a bunch of wireless modems for 6+ years now, and I can definitely vouch for MoFi being the best. Well, that's good to know. I tried several of them myself. I don't remember all the names, but I tried the hotspots that you got from the different carriers like Verizon and T-Mobile, where they give you like a MiFi device. Um, and tried those with a shared hotspot. Of course, you're limited to the data limit on that. I tried the Nighthawk router, found out that it worked, the Nighthawk LTE, and it's cheaper, but it didn't have the TTL option. And sure, you can come up with ways to configure the TTL, manually with some of these devices. But again, to save $100, I'd rather have it in the menu where you can just choose an option. That reminds me of one thing for Verizon. Let me go back to my screen here. The TTL setting here. Let me bring up the other TTL. So in the list, there is Linux 265, which is the default, and that's the one that you want. But there's been a couple people that have used Verizon that did get Verizon to work with the MoFi, even though some people can't. But in order for them to bypass the data limit, they actually changed this to Linux 64, and that seemed to work for them. So if the Linux 65 doesn't work, try the 64 for Verizon. All the other ones from everybody I've heard from, the 65 default is the one that seems to work well. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Any other question? Wayne, thanks a bunch again. Best day ever when new vids drop. It's the best day for me too because I get excited. When I work on my videos, it's kind of frustrating when you're right in the midst of the video and I know I've got 15 more tips to go and it's going to take me hours and hours and hours to put these videos together. But I get real excited when I can post a video because I know that all of my work is done. Now I can show it and hopefully help people for the things that they want to see. And appreciate, Wayne. You've been very nice with your comments and all the videos when they've come out, and appreciate all that. Let's see here. John, what would you say is the best UK ISP? Don't know. I am the US guy, so I can't really tell you. Maybe somebody else can comment on that. Um, haven't been there enough to know. But I do know that most international locations use GSM technology in terms of the cell carrier, if that's what you're asking about. And those are the ones that you're going to want to use both in the US and elsewhere. Whereas somebody like Verizon uses a different type of technology. And that's why they charge you a lot of money for international data usage because they have to pay somebody else on their network in order to communicate back to theirs. So that's the difference. Uh, let's see. See if I missed any other questions up above. So I'm not trying to sell you anything. um, so yeah, I know that the MoFi is not cheap, and I know that it's not something a lot of people can buy. And it's unfortunate. I really was hoping that I could find the Kufi for like $140, less than half the price, and have a simple way to make that work. And I could walk you through it. And someday they may send me one and I'll test it out. But I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna go ahead and buy one and then play with it when I know from a couple of my subscribers it's a little more complicated because that's not something that most of my subscribers would be interested in seeing how to do because this complexity of trying to configure it, you got to have like an IT background and get real comfortable with that stuff. It's pretty complicated. So hopefully something new will come out. Now, it's probably a good time I can mention this. Um, I don't know how long it is, but I've seen some rumors that MoFi is going to come out with a 5500 router, and the 5 meaning 5G. My understanding from the comments is that it's going to be multiple models. So it's not just going to be one 5500. There's going to be a 5500 5G, and they'll probably, I don't know if they're going to break it up by carrier or if they're going to break it into different types of 5G. I don't know, but it sounds like there's multiple models. And it sounds like it's coming out this year. Now, the reality of it is, especially for my use, when I'm out traveling, I'm in a lot of remote locations. I'm probably not going to get 5G in most any location. So you still have to have 4G capability. And I don't know whether the 5500 would be backward compatible with 4G and use that, or if it's only 5G. So there's a lot of up in the air things right now. So I wouldn't necessarily hold on to waiting for that one because it's probably going to be more expensive and it's probably only going to fit a certain niche. But if you're in a location where you know you got 5G right down the road, that might be worth waiting for and not buy the Sim 7 model now. I know for myself, it's going to be a while. The other thing I will mention is that Starlink, Elon Musk's new technology where they're putting satellites, thousands of satellites in low orbit, is going to start become available later this year. And nobody knows for sure what the numbers are, but the estimate is probably in the $80 a month range. And that will give you pretty good speed. It should be like 1 gigabit speed, or something seriously fast. And I will definitely look at that if the price is reasonable. Now you're going to have to buy their equipment, and it's probably going to be just available to a handful of people later this year. But maybe by this time next year, maybe it'll start becoming more public access available. That sounds like a very, very good option, for the future as well. Let's see here. So, one other thing that came to my mind is, with the MoFi, some of the kind of the logic behind it with the TTL. That gets real confusing for people. And why do you get unlimited internet? Do I need to buy a plan that's unlimited? Well, the plans that you get are the standard phone plans from the major carriers. So, I know on T-Mobile it's Magenta, and you just need the basic entry level plan. All you need is to get a plan that's going to give you data along with your cell service. Activate it in the phone, and then take that SIM and put it in the MoFi. The TTL will go past the data limit, so you don't need to pay extra. Some of the carriers have add-ons where you can add additional data, 10 gig or 50 gig. You don't need to pay for that, and you don't need to pay for the HD streaming. Some people think you need to pay to get the extra streaming capability, and there might be an extra 10 or 15, $20 a month to get a higher resolution. You don't need to do that either. The reason why is because the resolution's limited by the device that you're connecting to. So if you want to stream HD through your phone, sure, you might need to pay extra by using that plan on your phone. But the MoFi is just sending data, and it's not looking at it from a resolution standpoint. So it just streams data, and that data goes at full 4G speed, whatever the speed you get from your SIM. So I can go into Netflix and get 4K and use it off of my MoFi SIM chip. And I'm not using anything but the $20 a month basic plan, and it doesn't have HD added. It won't make any difference. You get the same resolution either way. So just be aware of that. Okay. Oh, there seems to be many sketchy vendors on Amazon. There's even a warning on the MoFi um, Amazon item that says be careful about who you buy this from. Well, the link that I have in the description below this video and my other couple of videos from the MoFi, they're pointing to the correct MoFi device. Now you can buy from MoFi Network directly, and it's basically the same price. Theirs is like $15 cheaper, but then they add $15 on for shipping and or for the different type of antenna. So it ends up being about the same price. So you can get it from either location, and those are both legit. You don't have to worry about it. But there are some clone fakes out there that are cheaper. Just know that you will pay $300 if you get the real thing. But good point there. There are some sketchy ones you got to be watching out for. And let's see. Do you think the carriers will ever catch on and close off the TTL trick? So get this question a lot as well. And I know for the prepaid plans, there was a number of people buying prepaid plans off of eBay and other locations, and it was $35 a month. For a while there, it was 25, and then it went to 35. And generally it was AT&T. And just a few months ago, 2, 3 months ago, AT&T went through and blocked a bunch of devices that they knew were not their phones. So they could tell. And you can tell right now when you plug in your SIM card in the MoFi and you go into your account on T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon or wherever, it will tell you the device that's connected, and it will probably say a Sierra module device. It won't say, an iPhone or an Android device. Um, so when you move your SIM from your cell phone into the MoFi, it can tell that it's in a different device. Now, I personally don't believe they're going to lock this down for the use the way it's being used with the MoFi anytime soon, which is why I have enough confidence that I'm relying completely on the MoFi as my internet solution provider right now. And the reason why I say that is because the industry is very heavily focused on 5G right now, and 5G speeds are going to be so much huger amounts of bandwidth usage that they're not in general going to care too much about the bandwidth that's being used by smaller devices. Now, having said that, like I mentioned earlier, somebody that used 500 gig every month got blocked. And so you have that risk if you're using a high volume of data. But if your volume is 300 gig or lower, like me, I mean, I'm using 150 gig and I'm doing everything I want. So I don't know how somebody's using 500 gig. They got to be doing some wild stuff. And I'm watching streaming TV and Netflix in 4K a lot to do that. So I just don't see that as being a priority for them. And the truth is, it's difficult for them to determine, other than looking at the device that it's plugged into. They can block it based on the device, but because they're looking at that TTL, they don't really know the data, how it's being used. And as long as you've got a plan that you're using that's a standard plan, I think they're less concerned about that than they are some like eBay purchased prepaid plan where they know that's being used for that purpose. It's a very small percentage of people that are using it the way we are with these devices. And for the most part, the terms and conditions don't say anything about being not allowed to use it in a different device. In fact, there's legislation that said you can use your SIM in a different device. What it's focused on is more data usage, and that's how they separate people that are abusing the system from people that are just using it because of different technology. So, good question. So, Maya, I love tricks to save money. I'm very cheap. Well, welcome to the club. So am I. My wife tells me that all the time. But I like quality, and this is what this sounds like. That's why I'm watching this, even though I don't need it. So you just like watching random videos because it sounds cool. Good. Oh, that's funny. Let's see. So somebody asked, what antenna do I use? So in the link of this video description, I put the links to ProxyCast and to Yagi. And I actually have both. And here's the key difference. The ProxyCast is about $110, $115. And it is an omnidirectional, and it's something that works well for me for my RV because I can put it on the roof and I can travel around. I have to go up there and position it every time I go somewhere. Now, I do have an antenna, uh, like a PVC that I use to lift it up at a higher elevation. And so I flip that up when I get to a place, but I don't have to like sit there on the roof trying to point it toward the tower to find where it's at. And that works really well for me. And the nice thing about that is the 10 dBi, which is actually better than the Yagi antenna in terms of the boost of the signal. And that antenna, that ProxyCast 10 dBi is higher than the WeBoost. So the WeBoost is like 5 dBi. So that one works really well for me. And what I've found is most places I go, I don't even need to use the boost antenna. I can connect up and I get 5, 10 megabit and I don't have any issues. But, if I really want to, if I'm going to be there for a while and it's convenient, I'll jump up there and throw that thing up and I'll get a better connection. Even though it's permanently linked, I'm still getting some boost even when it's not flipped up into position. Now with the Yagi antenna, the Yagi is a directional antenna. So the benefit to that, even though it's a lower dBi, so it's not quite as much of a boost, you can point it directly to the tower. So if you're in a fixed location, the Yagi might be a better solution, like on your house or in an apartment or something like that, because you can mount it and you can point it toward the tower that you want, that you get the best signal from, and it will direct that signal uh, directly into the MoFi. The other benefit to the Yagi is you can add a second Yagi and you can get what's called MIMO, which allows you to have multi in, multi out communication, and it will use the multiple connections to give you the best speed. And of course, you got to buy two antennas, two cables, and point both and turn them kind of at a different angle. And there's some YouTube videos that talk about that out there, so you'll be able to see it. Let's see here. Okay, Javier Orta. Hi, I have a MoFi 4500 with T-Mobile. In the MoFi, I cannot get more than 20 megabits of download and 16 of upload, but when I do hotspot with a cell phone, I get more than 60. Okay, so here's what that might be. If you have the SIM 4 module and not the newer SIM 7, you might not have access to the band 66 and 71. And with your phone, all the latest phones, even older ones going back a couple years, will use that separate band 71, which is faster for T-Mobile. So I found this to be the case for myself because I still have the SIM 4 MoFi, and I'll look on my phone and I'll get 20 megabits sometimes, 30 megabit, and then I go on my MoFi and I'm at 10. And the reason why is because it's running at that faster 71 and my MoFi doesn't have that. So that's one of the reasons why it's good to go with the SIM 7 model, because that gives you those extra bands, and those bands are faster because of the type of frequency that they're at. That's usually the case if you see a dramatic difference between the two. The other thing it can be, and let me bring up my picture one more time. Let's see here. On the MoFi, you have to be real careful. You'll see here, I am showing the screen. Yes. You'll see here that there's the wide paddle antennas. That is what connects to your signal to the tower. The smaller ones are the ones that connect to your Wi-Fi internally, where you want to share your hotspot to other devices. If you have those backwards, then it's not going to work right and you're not going to get the full speed you should be getting. So double check to make sure you have, and it's hard to read here, but it says primary 3G, 4G LTE antenna. That's where the wide ones go, because they'll fit on either side. And the smaller ones you're going to want to put on there. And when you add a antenna, you want to take from the primary, there's a primary and a secondary. You want to put it on the primary first if you're only using one antenna, and you want to put it on the secondary if you're using the second antenna, two of them. So that can make the communication not work full speed. Other than that, it's probably just settings within the MoFi. So make sure your APN and all that set correctly. Let me go back to provider selector here. Let's see. So you'll see on the provider selector tab, there's generic, which is what you use for T-Mobile. And then you have AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. And sometimes, if you have a different carrier, you don't necessarily know what to use. So generally use generic. It will still work if you have the APN right and you have the wrong setting here for the provider. It sometimes will still work, but you won't get the full speed. So double check to make sure those are the correct settings. All righty. Yeah, good point, Ty. I have learned a ton just from reading your MoFi comments. So there's a lot of comments from a lot of subscribers that have plugged in the MoFi and been testing it, and some that have had trouble getting it working, and some that have been able to make it successful. So very good recommendation. Go in the comments section below this video or other ones and take a look at the comments and see if other people have mentioned it. And you know what? Ask a question. I found that there's been a couple times people have asked questions in the comments. I try to answer every question that I see, but a lot of the other subscribers don't answer those questions. Occasionally I get some. I know some techie people have been in there. Bill has helped out with some things. I don't see him on here today, but um, so hopefully that somebody else will be able to help you out if I can't myself. Let's see. Okay, so Roman asks, I have a question about using a long range outdoor antenna. Should I go directly to the MoFi 4500 or should I use a signal booster with the MoFi? So if you're using an antenna, you just plug the antenna into the MoFi. The boost is the antenna picking up the signal, and the MoFi is all the hardware to receive that signal. So you don't need a booster in the middle. In fact, that might actually cause more of a problem than it solves. So, for example, you know, you can get a Wii Boost, which the Wii Boost is designed for like RVs and stuff like that, and it will boost cell signal. But you can use that, but I'd recommend not trying to go through the Wii Boost and then into the MoFi. You just want to plug the antenna directly from the MoFi with a cable, and just get the one with the right ends on it, and you'll be good to go. Uh, let's see. Ty, is it easy to enable IP pass through so I can use a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi router? Let's see. That's a good question. A little more technical. I'll have to think about that one a little bit. Yeah, yeah, I'll have to think about that one. So let me see if you post that in the comments section. I'll maybe try to get back at that one a little bit later. There's a couple things in that question there that I have to think through. Um, let's see here. Mm, okay, and Javier came back and said, I'll try a better external antenna. I have everything as you explain, and I cannot improve the speed. So, yeah, it's interesting that your phone gets double the speed that your MoFi does. I mean, the truth is, everywhere I've gone, I've been able to get almost the identical speed between the two. The only exceptions when that band is the wrong setting. And you might play with the bands. One of the things I like to do is go in there and do the band scanner, find all the bands that are available, and then I go through them one at a time and I test the speed. Got to wait about a minute after the reboot and after it comes back before you test it to make sure it's fully active. But find the one that gives you the best speed and then stick with that one. And I usually find that it runs the same as my phone. Now, I'll throw this out at you. I don't have it on the screen to show you, but there's a little trick that on a cell phone, most cell phones, I should say, it doesn't work with all of them. I have a couple of videos on this. There is a mode that you can go into on your phone, and it's kind of helpful because it gives you information. So if you dial from the phone number of your cell phone, star 3001 pound 12345 pound star, it's a long one, star 3001 pound 12345 pound star. That takes you into a maintenance mode that most technicians use. And in there is an LTE menu. And if you look at the serving cell info menu, got to give it a minute for it to come up, it will tell you the band that your cell phone is using. And there may be other ways to get access to this. That's the way I know how to do it. Um, so if you look at that band and you see band 12 or band 71, then match that setting on the MoFi and you should get the same speed. If you're not, there's got to be something else going on in the MoFi with the setting, or maybe you're using the MoFi antenna inside where it's not. I mean, if you don't have an added antenna and you're kind of enclosed in an area, or maybe it's interfering with other communication devices. So move it away from anything that might be creating some electromagnetic interference, that kind of thing. Run a cable outside and put an antenna booster. That usually will help. But you can match the band to really confirm one way or the other. Okay. So somebody asked, how much better is that Yagi in terms of megabits per second? So I've seen it vary sometimes where it doesn't make any difference, and I've seen it double and even triple the speed. So it really comes down to what is the communication between you and the tower? Are you being blocked? Are you at a distance great enough that it's causing communication problems? That's where the antenna comes in. And like I mentioned earlier, I use the ProxyCast, which is an omnidirectional, actually has higher DPI than the Yagi, but the Yagi works by pointing it directly to the tower. The only time you're ever going to need an antenna booster is if you don't have a good communication with the tower. You can have a really good communication with the tower, and like some of the subscribers have mentioned, the tower is so maxed out you only get like 5 megabit no matter what you do. And it's because that tower is in an area that's just overloaded, and so they reduce the speed for everybody that's connected to it. So even though you're a half a mile away from the tower, you're not getting good speed. And I've been in the middle of nowhere. I went to Lake Havasu, and I was 20 miles out of town up in the hills, and there happened to be an antenna that I could see across the river, and I was getting 75 megabit, middle of nowhere, but there was a tower there. And I've been to other places where I've had a tower that's no more than 1 or 2 miles away, and I was getting 5, 4, 3 megabit. Most of the places I've gone to, I've been able to get decent speed though, and I generally will look at places that have good speed so that I'm not out in the middle of nowhere with nothing for internet access while I'm traveling. Um, Repeat that setting one more time. Okay, let me see if I can bring it up on the screen here. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. What's the best way to do this? I'm going to bring up Notepad. All right, show the screen. So, on your cell phone, dial star 3001 pound 12345 pound star, and then hit the dial button. And that's a special code that puts you into a test mode on your phone. It's called field test mode. And if you look at my videos, you'll see a couple of videos that talk about this, um, and it explains the menus are slightly different between Android and iPhone, and some phones don't have the full menu options, and some have much more detail. The other thing you can see when you dial this number is your connection quality. So you know how when you're scanning the bands on the MoFi, it'll give you the DBI signal that tells you the quality. You can get that information from your phone as well. And generally, a minus 120, 130 is you're going to lose signal fully. And if you get down to like minus 80, minus 50, minus 60, somewhere in that range, you're going to have the best signal possible. So that tool right there, that code is pretty handy to be able to check that on your phone and use it as a kind of a test device. All right. I'll give this a couple more minutes just to answer any more of the questions you have, and then I think we'll close it out. And I hope you guys got some use out of this. And I'll plan on doing more live videos again if there's value in it. Not necessarily just on the MoFi, but on other videos that I do as well. So let's see. Cool. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. While we're at it, um, again, in the description of the video, uh, yeah, I am cheap, like I mentioned earlier, but I do this full time now. Even though I make a lot less than I did when I was an IT director, I am doing videos full time, and I do make money off of people watching the ads and stuff on my YouTube videos. And I appreciate when people watch and watch through the ads, that kind of thing. Also, your comments will raise the attention level of my videos. Your subscriptions and your likes all make a difference. So I appreciate all that. I really do this primarily because I like helping people. I mean, that's been my career for 30 years, and I just enjoy doing it. And now I can do it remotely and travel around the country and see some scenery while I'm at it, and a whole lot less stress than I had a year ago working full time in an IT position. So I appreciate everybody doing that. And also in the links in the description below the video, I have the Sim 7, I have the Sim 4, I have the ProxyCast and the Yagi antenna links. I do get an affiliate percentage for purchases when you click through to Amazon. It's like 4%, 3%, 2%, depending on the device you buy. Doesn't change your cost at all. So if you are planning on buying something, hey, I appreciate it when you click that link because it helps me make a little extra money on the side doing that as well. I don't do Patreon, and I mean, I set one up, but I don't use that. I don't solicit for any other money. I'd like to do it just basically by sharing my videos and having people view them so that they're getting value for free, but it still gives me value as well. So appreciate Joe for the nice compliment there, and D and KM, everybody else. Thank you very much. Last chance. Any other final question, comment you want to make? I'll throw it up here. Otherwise, we'll call it a day here in a minute. Thank you very much. I think that's going to do it. Everybody have a great day, and I hope your weekend is wonderful, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.